Hello, IKYA. I have a question for you. I have a lot of friends that struggle with their families, and they are on a spiritual path and they work really hard on themselves, and they're wonderful, loving people, yet they have problems with their families. Now, my question is, when you're incarnated with a family and you share the same karma, do you have to stick around with it and stick with it, or are there other alternatives?
The concept of family is interesting. What matters spiritually is your cluster. And what we define as a spiritual cluster are atmas, souls, whatever you want to call it, individuals that you have often incarnated with in many different constellations and dimensions and timelines. And it's like a study group. And a study group can be from a few individuals to several thousand based on the journey. And you're all responsible for one another. And that is not limited to your biological family or the family you grew up in. Remember that if we go back a few generations, being human, because of everything moving at a slower pace, it meant when you incarnated into a family, that was more a space you were supposed to be in and experience through. Often, there wouldn't be a lot happening. You know, you could incarnate on a farm and you stayed there for your entire life, relating to the same people. And if you're a guy, you would get a wife, and that was it. And you would basically do the same thing they've been doing for generations. So incarnating would often be being in a specific space and experiencing through that. There wouldn't be a lot of exploration, a lot of unfoldment beyond that. We've come to a place in human history where we're changing, we're shifting gears, which means going through one lifetime can contain more experience than several lifetimes. Only a few hundred years ago. It's speeding up. So we change. Many people experience that. They go through several incarnations in one incarnations. In one incarnation, we can see it almost like, in the theater. You have one set for one part of the play, and then after the intermission, then they have a new set. And many people experience life like that. We go through different phases because everything has sped up. It's so much quicker now. So, when it comes to the family we relate to when we grow up, sometimes that shows us more of a backdrop and the starting point of the lifetime. They represent the karma, and we can see ourselves, we can see our own patterns, we can see our own karma, but often it represents what we are moving away from. So as we grow and as we find our path, we can see our family, okay, this is kind of my starting point. This is where my karmic work starts. This is the backdrop. I can see myself clearly, but I am growing and unfolding, and I'm not that anymore. And this is common. Many people on their own spiritual path incarnate into families where they can see that the rest of the family is basically standing still. You can have your parents and brothers and sisters, and you can see that they are standing still. They're still kind of perpetuating the same karmic patterns, and you've broken away from that. And when that happens, you don't feel like you're part of them anymore in that form. And you can use them as a mirror and check yourself for your patterns, but sometimes you can also feel like being with them simply triggers patterns that are not productive for you anymore. And there has to be better ways to deal with this. And yes, there are. Today, because there's a shift, I often tell people that the family you make is more important than the family you grew up with. Because with people you meet on your way, they point forward. They represent your growth. They often represent the next level in your own unfoldment in consciousness, while their family often represents the patterns and the heavier karma you're dealing with. And you need people who can point forward, who can pull you forward. And one of the easiest ways to achieve more success in life is to surround yourself by people who are good at what you want to learn. So when you see that, oh, I want to develop this skill in myself, I want to develop these qualities and potentials in myself, choose to be around people who are already good at that. This is how we design our families. It's seeing that, like the family we grew up with is a starting point, but try to choose people in your life that represents your goals and build your family based on that. So I sometimes jokingly say that the family you build should be modeled after Greek gods. Look at their superpowers. Find people with the superpowers you want to develop in yourself. So you have kind of this panel of individuals representing collectively that kind of sounding board for the spiritual potentials you want to bring forth in yourself. And when you do that, those people are more important because most likely they all belong to your spiritual cluster anyway. But they represent your growth. So we incarnate differently. We're a lot freer as individuals. So we can recognize that, yes, the family we grew up in, that's a starting point, that's one space. And we can mirror certain things, but they can't necessarily mirror our growth. They can't necessarily mirror our potential. They can mirror our resistance often and patterns that we have a difficulty moving out of. But we can also work on our karma by trying to lift our consciousness, by trying to develop our potentials. Because when we are wiser, when we have better skills, when we have more knowledge and more harmony, and that we're more centered, then often we are able to go back and dissolve old patterns without having to loop in them, which we often do when with our kind of like start family. So do not be discouraged when you see that you've grown out of your family and feel that you can't connect with them. That is okay. It's becoming more and more, I would say, normal. So many people have talked with me over the years about this, and they feel like, do I have to? Sometimes I say, yes, you have to. If I can see that the karmic patterns they represent are still prominent within that individual's journey, yes, you will need that. But it's not all you need. So think of family as first of all, as your cluster, a huge group of individuals that you're studying with in different ways, in different capacities, and try to attract the ones who point forward, because they can assist you more than your biological family, based on your karma, based on your growth potential. So relax and look at your family and feel free. They can be whoever they want to be. They can be stuck in their patterns. You don't have to criticize them. You don't have to let yourself be triggered. Build the family you want. Build your family of individuals with superpowers that can inspire you and lift you. And hopefully, they will see your superpowers too. So that the dynamic will be about releasing all these potentials and seeing each other, not just based on the patterns, but seeing all the wonderful talents and potentials you have. The family you make is more important than the one you grew up with. Build it. Be strategic. Look for people of the superpowers you need and use that to develop your own. Because, as we all know, we all need, a superhero. But it means that you have to become that superhero yourself. And this is how you do it.